Once again, I just want to make my position clear that despite the fact that this second time with COVID was pretty rough, I would never ever support locking people in their home. I would never ever support making people get a certain treatment that they do not want to voluntarily take, especially when the data is abundantly clear that for some people that this is harming them. I would never be in favor of telling people that they can't go to work because of the air and a cold. We were completely gaslit, and the people who were responsible for making policy over the last 3 years have got it all completely wrong. And I'm no expert, but I remember posting a Facebook status in March of 2020 and saying that I'm not scared of the coronavirus. I'm still not scared of the coronavirus. Bring it on. I'll do it again. Humanity has overcome many, 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 many more difficult things than a cold. If you guys are really that terrified of it, then just hide in your house and wait to die. I'm not trying to be rude, but the world is a beautiful place. Life is the greatest gift that we are given, and to shy away from the adventure that's been given to you and the opportunities that lay before you, it's sad. It's, in my mind, absolutely insane.
What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovcik. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health, and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass. Okay? All right.
All right, everybody, what is going on today? I've had some trouble with some guest scheduling recently, and it's not a big deal. Just life kind of happens. I had COVID-19 last week, so I kind of wanted to talk about that today and my experiences with having COVID now 2 times. I had it once in late March, early April 2021, and then I literally just had it last week. I'm recording this February 7th, so pretty much end of January, early February is when I had it. And because everybody's still such a hypochondriac about a cold, I had to take a week off of work. And once again, this was not a voluntary thing. This was just, you're going to do this because this is what your doctor said, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. So as everybody knows, in late 2019, early 2020, the whole world had a change, and I've enjoyed talking about it a lot on this show because I think it's really interesting to hear people's perceptions of their realities and where they were exactly when this huge shift changed. And a lot of people really just changed the way they looked at the world, and I've always found that very, very fascinating, that such an event could just trigger so many things, and once again just really change the way that we look at reality as we know it. And I really think COVID was one of those things that did that. So I know everybody's probably sick of hearing about it and sick of talking about it, but I do think it's pretty fascinating to talk about nonetheless. So I'm not vaccinated, never was, more than likely never will be, unless I can't really think of any reason why that would change. My wife and I had looked into it and both determined that our risk was so that there was no real reason for us to go out and get it. And we both had recovered about a couple of months after the vaccine was available from it. So, by then it was pretty clear for most of the data that was like trickling in from Israel, and I think even some of the European countries, that there was no real reason to get worked up and get vaccinated after having the cold initially. So, hopefully YouTube doesn't give me a strike for that because I'm dissenting from the World Health Organization, but we'll just kind of see what happens. So, I want to tell everybody kind of where I think I got it from, but I can't say for sure. So there was this show that my band played. It was literally in like a old high school, I want to say, and they had this huge auditorium, and I was playing in two bands at the time, my band, A Common Crown, and then also a band where we just did like mostly covers with like a two originals called Just Plain Nasty. So I had two sets that night. So first we went up as Just Plain Nasty, and everybody seemed fine as far as I could tell. And then Common Crown, I think, played last, and it was a pretty cool show. I had a good time. I think if you actually look up a Common Crown live or Just Plain Nasty live, you'll probably be able to see the videos, and it's in, I want to say, March of 2021. So we played, and then like throughout the week, I remember getting some messages from people saying, "Hey, we got COVID." So just be aware that, you know, if you catch it, the more than likely you caught it there. So I really didn't think anything of it at the time. And I remember one of my coworkers, who's just one of the funniest people I ever knew in my life at the time, because I no longer at this job. He had said he felt a little rough throughout that week. And then he came in, I want to say like that Friday, and said that he had no taste or smell. And everybody freaked out and sprayed his still down with Lysol, and had told him to go home because he had COVID. So I was beginning to feel, if I recall correctly, just like a little under the weather, not like bad or sick, just kind of like I didn't sleep well, wasn't recovered enough for my workouts, but nothing, like no red flags went off in my mind. I just figured, okay, well, whatever this is will surely pass. So go on throughout the weekend. I kind of had that same feeling all throughout the weekend. And then come Monday, I remember waking up, and for all my coffee drinkers out there, I drink dark roast coffee. Well, what do you know about dark roast coffee? Dark roast coffee kind of kicks you in the throat, and it has a very, very bold taste to it, which is what I like about it. So at the time, I was doing the carnivore diet, and I was drinking my black coffee first thing in the morning, and I remember drinking it and something just didn't quite seem right. So I didn't think twice about it. I went downstairs, took a shower, came back upstairs, and Butcher Box has this pork belly bacon that is just like fantastic. It has like this real peppery, spicy almost kind of taste to it. And then I also made steak and eggs. So I remember trying a piece of the bacon and not being able to taste it, but I felt perfectly fine. Like I felt normal. So I took a bite and I couldn't taste it. I'm like, well, what the hell's going on here? So I sit down. I think I had a New York strip, 4 eggs scrambled, and some bacon, and I couldn't taste any of it. So I'm like, well, this is really, really weird. So I come upstairs and I sit on the bed. My wife's getting up. Well, girlfriend at the time, not wife, was sitting on the bed and getting ready to go to work that day. So I sit down on the bed and I look around. I'm like, well, I think I got COVID. And she's like, what? I said, yeah, I can't taste or smell anything. And we ultimately made the decision that we were just going to go on life as normal. I mean, this was 2 years ago. So, I mean, it was still kind of the height of everything, and people were still freaking out. This was March 2021. And all my coworkers at the time had either had it or had been vaccinated. And at the time, there wasn't enough data available to let us know that the treatments hadn't quite worked as they were promised. So I was under the impression that they were fully immune. And then obviously we knew that people who had natural immunity and had it and got over it were obviously relatively safe, right? Like the likelihood that you were going to get it again within a few months is pretty low. So we just went to work as normal, and nobody had got sick from me. Nobody even knew I had it because I didn't really have any symptoms. I was a little bit plugged up, and people said I looked flushed, but just didn't really feel bad at all. I mean, I still worked out and everything. I mean, at the time, I think I was doing the X3 bar, which is just, you know, check out my video for the X3 bar workout where I review that. And for anybody looking for like a nice home gym system, I actually do recommend getting that just because it's a nice tool to have around the house. So, yeah, I still worked out and everything still felt perfectly fine. And one of the main reasons why I did not want to take a week off that specific week is because my band was going out to Columbus, Ohio to play actually a pretty big show that was really cool. I really, really enjoyed that show. I think it was sold out. And yeah, I just wasn't going to bring the whole house of cards down because there was no reason to, and I couldn't afford to take a week off. So, you know, let it rock. So, nobody got sick, and then eventually people found out. I think after I quit that job, and they were like, "Oh, you were here with COVID." I was like, "Yeah." Guess what? Nobody knew. So who cares? Real quick story. I think I told this when I peaked quinones on the first time, but I couldn't taste or smell anything at all, and I actually had a Yukon with a water leak in. And I was, what we do with water leaks that are bad enough, that smell of mold and everything that gets in the carpet when they get completely soaked, that actually kind of gets into the metal. So when it gets into the metal, obviously you're not going to really be able to get it out unless you take off all like the sound dampening, which is just kind of like this stuff that's put on top of the metal. You'd have to take all that off, and then that doesn't even always fix it. So what we do typically is we get clear coat, like the stuff that goes over the paint on your car, and then we use that clear coat to cement that smell down into the vehicle rather than have it stay up in the air. So I couldn't smell anything, and I had all the doors open on this Yukon, all the carpet out, and I'm spraying clear coat in there. And I remember just seeing people start trickling out from their stalls looking at me. They're like, "Dude, what the fuck are you doing?" And I couldn't smell anything. So I was like, "All right, well, sorry, I'll put it outside." So put the vehicle outside, finished spraying the clear coat, and I couldn't smell it, but I remember like gagging because I had sprayed so much. And when the lady came to pick up her car, this is when everybody was still kind of saying that they were just marking down all sorts of deaths as COVID, like people would get hit by a truck or something like that and say they died from COVID. Um, the customer came to pick up her vehicle after it was all done. We had the carpet there and everything, and I put it back in and got the vehicle up to detail and had it all nice and ready for this customer to take. Because it was a brand new Yukon. I mean, I don't even think it had like 5,000 miles on it. And one of the sunroof drains had kind of came loose or wasn't fully clipped in, so it just poured water in. Anyways, lady came to pick up her vehicle, and she said and it smelled like chemicals so bad that on her death certificate, it is going to say that she died from Yukon, not that she died from COVID. So I just thought that was really, really funny. And once again, they never knew that I had COVID at the time because I just didn't tell anybody. So that was the last time I was actually sick until this most recent time with COVID. Now, before the first time I had COVID in March, April of 2021, I had a wicked stomach bug in January of 2021, and I thought I had COVID then. I went and I got tested. This is when they would jam the fucking thing way up in your nose, and that really sucked. But thankfully I tested negative, and I just had this wicked stomach bug, and I was literally sleeping on a pee pad because I would shit myself while I sleep, and it was just absolutely horrendous. It was like 2 nights of that, and just this wrenching gut pain all the freaking time. So honestly, I would go through COVID the first time like 6 times over than ever have to put up with that again. And then COVID like this time probably like 2 or 3 times over rather than go through that stomach bug again. I mean, that was like the sickest I think I've ever been in my entire life. It was so freaking bad. So fast forward to about 2 weeks ago. I'm at my in-laws' house and we're playing card games, just having a good time. And we were drinking, and it was just a good time. So I just started getting like a little bit cold. And so I figured, okay, well, I'll just put my hoodie on so that way, I'm not as cold. So I kept getting like colder and colder and colder and colder. And I just was freezing my ass off. And I started feeling like shit. And I went upstairs and had diarrhea. Came back downstairs and they're like, "Wow, you don't look too good." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't feel too good either." And kind of hung out there for a little bit, and then we drove home. My wife had not like too much to drink, but more than she normally drinks. She's having a good time, and normally I'm the one that likes to go balls to the walls with the alcohol. So I drank a little bit, but not too much. But she ended up driving home because I was like so just out of it. I was freezing my ass off, and this was a Saturday night, so this is 2 Saturdays ago. And I woke up, and and once we got home, I went straight to bed, and then woke up in the morning, and I felt pretty much back to normal. Still like a little bit off, but not too bad. So I went and I worked out, and like my workout wasn't quite as like intense. I didn't feel quite as into it as I normally do, even though I drank my pre-workout and everything. Excuse me. So that Sunday was a little iffy, and then throughout the week I just was a little plugged up, and I thought I don't know, maybe I'm getting a sinus infection or something like that. No big deal. So come Friday, I was going to go to Med Express, but they required masks there, and I'm like, I'm not feeling like wearing a mask today, so I'm just not going to do that. So throughout the week, I was feeling a little iffy, but just didn't quite think anything of it. And then Saturday, kind of got the chills again. Not as bad, but definitely got the chills. Come that Sunday, I felt really rough by the end of the day. So I woke up in the morning Monday and I had this severe pressure in my ears and I like couldn't hear almost. And I mean, I already can't really hear because live music, loud music, working in a shop now for 10 years, my hearing is definitely mildly impaired. So I decided, all right, well, I'm going to text my boss and tell him, hey, I'm going to go to urgent care just to kind of see if they give me something to help me out and I'll be into work. So I go there, they make me put on a stupid fucking mask, and I'm waiting, and they call me back, and they do all the tests. And it was kind of funny when the lady was like checking me in. I had to keep asking her what because I still had pressure in my ears. So at the time, I thought the day before I had a sinus infection, but I thought the sinus infection had kind of like drained out and worked its way into my ears when I would lay down. Because I remember I like couldn't sleep with my mouth closed because I normally breathe through my nose, but I was so congested I just couldn't do that. So I had to breathe through my mouth. And
What's up, everybody? We're going to take a quick break and tell you about the show's sponsors. We are brought to you by LMNT electrolytes. I've been using this stuff for years, and what I've honestly found is that if I didn't have electrolytes before some kind of cardio, and sometimes even before workouts, that my workout performance or definitely cardio performance would suffer greatly. Sodium is responsible for every single movement pretty much in your entire body, and let's say you drink a lot of caffeine like I like to do, then maybe it is a good idea, like I do every single morning, put some LMNT chocolate electrolytes there in your coffee to get a little bit more sodium, potassium, and magnesium in your coffee, so that way whatever diuretic effect you get from the caffeine is pretty much diluted by the fact that you put chocolate salt in it. Also, it tastes really, really good. Get some chocolate cream or hazelnut cream or even coconut, and mix that all up. It tastes really, really good. So yeah, make sure you drop by, go to drinklmnt.com/inlibertyandhealth and pick you up some electrolytes today. All right, guys, thanks.
if you look on my Twitter, there was a video where I said, oh, I think I'm just battling a wicked sinus infection, but I still got my squats in. So anyways, I'm at urgent care and they put me in the room and they say, all right, well, let's do all these checks in your ears. Let's do all this bullshit. And then they're like, all right, well, we're going to test you for strep and we're going to test you for COVID. So they test me for those, and the lady comes in and just does some more checks, checks my breathing and everything. And the doctor finally comes in and says, oh, well, you tested positive for COVID again. I was like, oh, no shit. And I don't think all of this was COVID. Maybe it was, but I don't know. We're going to review some studies and some common symptoms here in a little bit. But so he said I tested positive for COVID. I'm like, oh, all right. Well, he's like, well, when were your first symptoms? I said, last Saturday, I had the chills, and then throughout the week, I was feeling a little iffy. He's like, all right, well, you're supposed to isolate because you're not vaccinated for 10 days from the onset of symptoms, which still just seems absolutely ridiculous to me. So he's like, all right, well, then this Friday will be 10 days since your first symptoms. I was like, all right. So he handed me a slip and said, all right, well, this is your slip to not go to work, essentially. So I sent it to my boss, and he said, all right, well, you can we can't have you back because it's what your doctor said. And I'm like, well, that's kind of dumb because I would just go back to work if I felt fine. Like, people can get over it. So stayed home all last week, went to work on Saturday, and now I'm obviously back to work again. And I'm still a little congested, but I gotta say that actually COVID the second time around was a lot more rough on me than it was the first time around, which is very surprising because it seems like for most people, the second time they got it really wasn't that big of a deal. I have to disagree, at least in my personal experience. Now, obviously, I don't have data to back this up or anything to really support. This is just my experience. So Sunday felt pretty horrible. Monday, I got the chills again, real bad. And then Tuesday still felt kind of but like most of the way there. Wednesday, pretty much, I would say like 80%. And then Thursday, Friday, I would say like 90, 95%. I'm still not 100% just because all this shit in my sinuses. I'm sure people could probably tell I'm a little bit plugged up, but it is driving me nuts. I just wish this would go away because I would feel normal then. I did have a sore throat for most of the time, which seems to be pretty common amongst people who get COVID. And yeah, so um, those are my two experiences with COVID. Um, I'm a younger, healthy guy. Everybody sees my workouts. I take my multivitamins and vitamin D. Yeah, I work out regularly. I'm not obese or anything like that. Um, and the second time was rough. It sucked. The first time I didn't even think it was like a thing at all. But yeah, definitely this most recent go around with it sucked. I can't lie. I still don't think it's worth shutting down the country or forcing people to get certain treatments for it. But yeah, it sucked. So let's kind of roll through what other people's common symptoms are, and we'll just kind of shoot the shit from there. Where the heck is this? There we go. We're gonna do a share screen. Exit out of this. So from wisconsin.gov, COVID-19 symptoms of illness. People with COVID-19 can experience a range of symptoms. Most people have mild symptoms and are able to recover at home. Some may have severe symptoms that lead to hospitalization or death. You may have COVID-19 symptoms if you have any of these symptoms. My bad, I read that incorrectly. Cough, new onset or worsening of chronic cough, shortness of breath, fever, chills, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, muscle or body aches, headache, new loss of taste or smell. Not everyone with COVID has these symptoms. For many, symptoms are mild with no fever. Some people may also experience fatigue, gastrointestinal symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain. You can still spread the virus to others, even if you have mild or no symptoms. I want to say if you go back to the podcast I did with Rob Goodwin and Rob Wolf, we kind of covered asymptomatic spread, maybe not, but pretty much if you look up asymptomatic spread, I think even the CDC said it's incredibly rare. And then there was a contact tracing study done by the University of East Anglia where they said it was like less than, I want to say 130 people who spread the virus asymptomatically out of like 10 million that they contact trace. So incredibly low. Jay Bhattacharya out of the University of Stanford, same deal. I think he said asymptomatic spread in a household accounts for 7 out of every 1,000 cases, and then symptomatic is like 17 out of every 1,000. I may be butchering that, but yeah, I would trust him on that. So I definitely had not like a bad cough, but just more coughing than I usually do because I don't really cough. I don't smoke or anything like that. Some shortness of breath, but I believe that was just mostly because of congestion, fever, chills. I had that. I had the sore throat, congestion, runny nose. Definitely had that. Muscle or body aches. I definitely had body aches. It kind of felt like I had someone like stabbing me in the lower part of my neck, and a little bit of lower back, just like tension throughout the beginning part of last week. Headache, a little bit. I couldn't really separate that from like sinus pressure and sinus pain from an overall headache. And the new loss of taste or smell. My smell and taste aren't quite as sharp and weren't quite as sharp as they normally are, but I could still like smell stuff over here and there. And the taste stuff was kind of iffy. So let's go to the CDC and see what they say about symptoms. People with COVID have a wide range of symptoms reported, ranging from mild symptoms to severe illness. Symptoms may appear 2 to 14 days after exposure to the virus, and anyone can have mild to severe symptoms. Possible symptoms: fevers or chills, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, new loss of taste or smell, sore throat, congestion, nausea or vomiting, diarrhea. To be completely honest with you, I don't know anybody off the top of my head other than maybe myself that had diarrhea from COVID. I don't know if that's necessarily a side effect. I just couldn't tell you. So that's from the CDC, and what they say, take that with a grain of salt. Your results may vary, your mileage may vary, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is from today.com, and they're talking about long COVID, which is really, really difficult to pin down. And it's a really slippery kind of snake, in my opinion, because To me, it seems like the people who got the treatment seem to have COVID more and more often than people who did not get it, which is convenient. But uh, long COVID just seems to be this ambiguous thing that encapsulates fatigue or anything that you may feel afterwards. So I don't want to berate this article too much, despite the plethora of symptoms reported by patients with long COVID. A new study points to just 7 that are unique to the illness. However, some long COVID researchers and doctors who have treated the disease believe this list is far from comprehensive. They analyzed data from the electronic health records from more than 17,000 patients diagnosed with COVID before April of 2022, and more than 17,000 patients diagnosed with a different respiratory virus between March 1st of 2020 and April 1st of 2021, and 15,694 people with no virus diagnosis, but who sought healthcare between 2020 and 2022. Researchers have concluded that some symptoms typically associated with long COVID do not appear more often after a COVID infection than they do with other respiratory viruses, according to the report published in the Open Forum for Infectious Diseases. Compared to other viral respiratory illnesses, long COVID was most strongly associated with heart palpitations, fast beating, fluttering or pounding, hair loss, fatigue, chest pain, dyspnea, if I'm saying that correctly, difficulty breathing, that is, joint pain, and obesity in the post-infectious period. I just kind of want to expand on this. Heart palpitations, I think everybody knows what that thought is and what the origin of that could be, and I'm guessing that's more in a certain population that made a certain choice that a certain population decided not to. Hair loss, I've literally heard of nobody losing hair after COVID. Maybe it's stress. I lost hair over the last 3 years, but that's just because I'm getting older, and I think that's what my genetics predispose me to. Fatigue, that's so ambiguous because people have shitty diets, they're obese, they already don't resistance train, sleep well, they drink too much caffeine, maybe they're crashing from the caffeine, maybe they're lacking in vitamin D. There's so many different things that could cause fatigue that's just so like unclear. It's so vague. Chest pain, maybe that could be the certain other thing that I'll get a strike for if I say. Dyspnea, difficulty breathing. There are people who got COVID and had lung damage from COVID. So, I mean, that's totally possible. I don't think that's a majority of people. I think I heard the number somewhere where they said like 1 in 10 people or like 1 in 4 people had long COVID. It just seems so, like I said, so vague, and like they have this wide definition of it so they can include all these things into it. Joint pain, once again, if people are obese, and in already an inflammatory state, as in obese and insulin resistant, then maybe that joint pain's just there because you have so much weight on your joints and you're not training or walking or doing anything to alleviate that joint pain. And obesity in the post-infectious period. So I kind of want to expand on this one the most, to be completely honest with you. So obesity in the post-infectious period could actually be a legit thing because of reduced energy expenditure due to fatigue, due to loss of appetite and people just over consuming. Loss of appetite would probably cause you to eat less, but if you're not being as active, and then you're going to gain weight if you continue to just eat the way that you did and were maintaining your weight. So could that be a thing of long COVID? Yeah, but excuse me. I don't think that's because of COVID. I think that's just overall lifestyle. The hope is that this research will help patients and their doctors to more easily recognize long COVID. Study co-author Dr. Adnan Qureshi, neurologist at the University of Missouri Healthcare, tells today.com the research may help healthcare providers know what they should be screening for. We thought once you survive the acute infection, then everything would be over. He explains how survival has improved a lot. It's quite apparent that this is not a one-time thing for many. I would mostly agree with that. Dr. Lawrence Papira, director of Columbia University Irving Medical Center's Long COVID Clinic, tells Today.com that the main strength of the new study is the number of patients it includes, but he adds that the study missed some of the cardinal symptoms of long COVID, aka post-COVID syndrome, most likely due to the underlying data. Chief amongst these systems are brain fog, incredibly ambiguous, disabling fatigue, what does that even mean, and dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system, which controls the subconscious bodily functions such as breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. I never heard of that, and that's not to say that it's not happening, but I haven't heard of it. The dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system explains why some patients' heart rates skyrocket after climbing 2 or 3 steps, and that the symptoms may be what the authors of the new study are listing as heart palpitations, Papira says, but there are numerous issues with using electronic medical records to make conclusions about long COVID data. I don't want to expand upon this much more. This will be in the show notes. If you guys want to check it out, feel free to do that. Definitely interesting. So we're going to go to PubMed and NCBI, just kind of review all this stuff and kind of talk about what they see the most common symptoms are. So this was published in 2020 of September of 2020. Jeez, sorry guys. COVID-19 is an emerging infectious disease. A study about features of this infection could be very helpful, and better knowledge about this infectious disease. A current systematic review and meta-analysis were aimed to estimate the prevalence of clinical symptoms of COVID-19 and a systematic review and meta-analysis. Systematic review using Medline, PubMed, Scopus. Oh, apologies. And Google Scholar has been conducted in the current systematic review and meta-analysis. The articles published in the period of January 1st, 2020 to April 2nd, 2020, written in English and reporting clinical symptoms of COVID was reviewed. To assess the presence of heterogeneity, the Cochrane's Q statistic, I2 index, and the tau squared test were used because significant heterogeneity between the studies or an effects model with 95% CI was used to calculate a pool of estimation of each symptom prevalence. So the results, the most common symptoms for COVID-19 patients include a fever in 81.2% of people, a cough in 58.5%, fatigue in 38.5%, dyspnea 26.1%, and the sputum 25.8%. Based on the meta-regression results, the sample size used in different studies did not have significant effect on the final estimate value. So obviously I'm not going to read this whole study. We'll just look at that. That will be in the show notes if you guys want to dig a little more. I did read this one here, and we'll review this and then close it out. And I'm curious everybody else's thoughts. So hopefully you guys jump in the comments and let me know how it was like for you. In December 2019, a novel coronavirus named Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2, or 2019 nCoV, with unknown origin, spread in Hubei province of China. The epidemic disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 called coronavirus, COVID-19. The presence of COVID-19 was manifested by several symptoms ranging from asymptomatic and mild symptoms to severe illness and death. The viral infection expanded internationally, and the WHO announced a public health emergency of international concern. To quickly diagnose and control such a highly infectious disease, suspicious individuals were isolated, and diagnostic treatment procedures were developed through patients' epidemiological and clinical data. Early in the COVID-19 outbreak, WHO invited hundreds of researchers from around the world to develop a rapid quality diagnosis treatment and vaccines. But so far, no specific antiviral treatment or vaccine has been approved by the FDA. Highlight this real quick. I just want to see when this was published. August 4th of 2020. Interesting. At present, COVID-19 is managed by available antiviral drugs to improve symptoms and, in severe cases, supportive care, including oxygen and mechanical ventilation used for infected patients. However, due to the worldwide spread of COVID-19, has become a serious concern in the medical community. According to the current data of WHO, the number of infected dead cases increased from 8,700,008 and 461,715 respectively. That's from December 2019 to June 2020. Given the high mortality rate and economic damage to various communities to date, great effort must be made to produce successful drugs and vaccines against 2019 nCoV infection. For this reason, first of all, the characteristics of the virus, its pathogenicity, and its infectious pathways must be well known. Thus, the main purpose of this review is to provide an overview of this epidemic disease based on the current evidence. Okay, so we're going to go down to the conclusions. This study is actually pretty interesting. I wanted to stop here. Back in late 2019 and early 2020, the common symptoms were cough, fever, fatigue, body aches, and shortness of breath. The severe disease was pneumonia, coughing up blood, leukopenia, kidney failure, protein or blood in the urine. Uncommon symptoms: headache, nasal congestion, loss of taste or smell, coughing up sputum, trouble breathing, pain in joints or muscles, chills, nausea or vomiting, and diarrhea. Pretty interesting how these uncommon symptoms all of a sudden became common symptoms. Just thinking about that there. So the conclusions: 2019 COVID exists in respiratory, fecal, and blood samples of COVID-19 patients. However, the main route of transmission is through inhalation of respiratory droplets or contact with contaminated fomites due to the persistence of the virus on surfaces. I think we pretty much mostly know that the virus hardly does live on surfaces at this point. Although many treatments have been proposed, there are currently no specific options for treating COVID-19 or preventing 2019 and COVID infection like influenza. The prevalence of COVID-19 is expected to decrease as the weather warms up in the summer, and the 2019 COVID infection is predicted to start again with a gradual cooling of the air in the fall. Unfortunately, it is not yet possible to say that improved people from COVID-19 are resistant or susceptible to the second infection. Due to the high rate of mortality and economic damage to various communities to date, a significant attempt should be made to produce successful drugs and vaccines against 2019 COVID-19. However, in the absence of vaccines and antivirals, the most important way to control the disease amongst the populations is regular hand washing, the use of disinfectants, and the prevention of contact with the face and mouth after interacting with the infected environment. Okay, so it's kind of interesting looking at that. 3 years, Jesus, from pretty much when we were living through all that.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a little break from the show real quick to tell you about the show's sponsors. I am now working with the great Stephen Fox to bring you Fox and Sons coffee. As you can see, I got 2 bags right here, or for those listening, I was holding 2 bags. It is organically roasted up in Michigan. If you're a caffeine addict, much like myself, then head over to foxandsonscoffee.com to get yourself some of their fantastic coffee. They got a light roast, which I'm holding in my hand. They have the Electric Boogaloo blend, which is fantastic as well. I just had it this morning. And if you're like me, you like dark roast coffee, which kicks you right in the freaking face first thing in the morning. They have that for you as well. So head over to foxandsonscoffee.com, use code Kyle, Kyle, to get yourself a little discount. Let them know that I sent you, and get yourself caffeinated, get jacked and tan, and do what you got to do. All right, guys, back to the podcast. Thanks.
So, once again, I just want to make my position clear that despite the fact that this second time with COVID was pretty rough, I would never, ever support locking people in their home. I would never, ever support making people get a certain treatment that they do not want to voluntarily take, especially when the data is abundantly clear that for some people that this is harming them. I would never be in favor of telling people that they can't go to work because of the air and a cold. We were completely gaslit, and the people who were responsible for making policy over the last 3 years have got it all completely wrong. And I'm no expert, but I remember posting a Facebook status in March of 2020 and saying that I'm not scared of the coronavirus. I'm still not scared of the coronavirus. Bring it on. I'll do it again. Humanity has overcome many, 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 many more difficult things than a cold. If you guys are really that terrified of it, then just hide in your house and wait to die. I'm not trying to be rude, but the world is a beautiful place. Life is the greatest gift that we are given, and to shy away from the adventure that's been given to you and the opportunities that lay before you, it's sad. It's, in my mind, absolutely insane. Don't do it. Go out there, live your life, be happy. And I think being happy and having good relationships and a good diet and a good exercise routine and a good sleep routine will greatly improve your chances of surviving this. And that's just abundantly clear to me, and I think by all the data. And even if you don't improve all that, you're still like have like a 90 to 99% chance of surviving. So I don't know. I'm curious about everyone else's experience, how many times they had it, if they decide to get the treatment or not, or what. Please jump in the comments below. Subscribe, like, share. Reach out to me on Twitter at Matovcik, KMATOVCIK 7, and KYLEMATOVCIK. As of recording this, I'm suspended, and by the time this airs, I suspect I'll still be suspended on my main account. So yeah, check my link tree, check everywhere else. Make sure you go check out the show's awesome sponsors. We got the Machine Fuel BCAAs through Tiger Fitness and the world's best electrolytes, LMNT, as you can see right here, and obviously Fox and Sons Coffee as well, who just Stephen Fox just makes the most awesome freaking coffee in the world. I drank the Electric Boogaloo this morning, ground some up last night, and absolutely fantastic. Just a awesome experience, and he's just the coolest dude ever and has a great taste in music too. So yeah, guys, make sure you go check out all the sponsors. I hope this was informative, and I hope you guys just came away a little bit better informed and kind of have an idea of what it was like for me, at least. And then, maybe you had a similar experience. So I know this was kind of like aimless and not really anything like huge, but I just figured I'd put that out there. So yeah, guys, like, subscribe, and share, and until next time, take care.